In Revelation chapter 14, verses 6 through 12, we see a very powerful message. 3 messages, actually. We know them to be the 3 angels' messages. And in those 3 angels' messages, we see the first angel saying, "Fear God, give glory to him, because the hour of his judgment has come." Then the second angel's message is declaring that Babylon has fallen. And then ultimately the third message that this angel proclaims is a result of not heeding to the call of worshiping God as the true creator. But in verse 13, we see that there's a group of people that actually accepted this message of the first, second, and third angels. And we see that these people are identified for those who have the faith, who has the testimony of Jesus Christ and have the faith in him as well. And the question is, where is faith? And are we possessing the faith? In Luke chapter 18, verse 8, Jesus asked the question, when he comes back to this earth, will he find faith in it? And the question is, if this is the generation that we're going to be able to see Christ come from the clouds of glory, he's asking the question to you and I then. When he comes back to this earth, will he find faith? Well, what is faith? Well, we know that Romans 10, verse 17 says that faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. So ultimately what Christ is looking for is a group of people that will listen to his word, study his word, and know who he is based on the word that he has spoken. So when Christ says, when he comes back, in Luke 18, verse 8, when he comes back again, a second time, will he find faith? He's ultimately asking, will he find a group of individuals, a generation that is inspired by his word, that has heard his word, and is living his word? 2 Corinthians, Paul utters these words, and it's quite simple, and I believe that it's the Christian walk in its most basic, simplistic form, that we walk not by faith, we walk by faith, but not by sight. Ultimately, Christ doesn't want you to see everything that he has for you. He wants you just to take him at his word. So he's asking you, when he comes back a second time, will you be dependent on his word? Or are we living in a time where your experience has to be, well, I have to see it to believe it? You see, many of us in our life expect a very straight and narrow path. Get me to point A to point B. But sometimes God doesn't direct our lives in that way. He sometimes diverts us in places and puts us in situations where it gets us out of our comfort zone, and we have to be dependent on his word. Christ, again, utters the words, will he find faith? Will he find a generation who experienced his word in their lives, that are not dependent on sight or feeling or emotions, but simply are stating their belief in his word? And Christ wants you and I to be a part of that generation when he comes back a second time, that he will find a faithful generation and not a faithless generation. And we see that in 1 John chapter 5, verse 4 says that for whosoever is born of God overcometh the world, and this is the victory that overcometh the world, even our faith. Faith is essential for us to be overcomers. Faith is essential for us to be a part of that generation that sees Christ come back a second time. When Christ comes back a second time, will he find faith in you? Will your heart have his word in it? Will you be experiencing his promises every single day of your life? Christ asked the question, he's asking the question to you and I today. When he comes back, will he find you in his word? Will his word be abiding in your heart? He says that this generation that's coming forth is going to be a generation that has a lot of people who are basing their beliefs in everything else except his word. But we find hope. We find hope in that generation that's embraced the third angel's message and says we will be the generation that has the faith of Jesus Christ, and we have the testimony to describe what Christ has done to us. Not because we necessarily seen it or touched it or experienced it, but because the word is living in us. Christ wants to know, will you be a part of that generation that will be faithful even unto death?